This is an overview of our accounts receivable module. We have our master tables where we set up our customers and thereby ship to locations. We can have multiple ship to locations for each customer, and we're going to look at customer cat for Caterpillar. And the general tab, we have general information. We have the options to auto email the invoice, RMA notification statement, cash received notification. On the sales tab, we have quite a bit of information here. Division, their terms, freight code, territory if you choose to use it. You can assign a credit limit, you can assign past due days. And here you can override the product sale, return, and tool sale accounts from system configuration. We have our surcharge information. This is our material surcharge, and the weight to use is gross, net, ship, and weight of record. This tells the system where you want to lock the surcharge at order entry or invoicing, and whether or not you want to include it in the product price, and whether or not to bill the energy surcharge. You can have up to 2 salesmen set up with their percentage, and you can base it on percent of sales or flat out per piece. For accounts receivable, you have the options of auto allocating cash. You can assign a collection agent to the account if you choose. We can have a parent ID if you bill this customer, but the check comes out of corporate headquarters. You can put the corporate headquarter parent ID in here, and it will display all invoices, not just for the parent customer ID, but for what we call the children customers that are assigned to it as well. Pricing and price increase methods, you can have ship to or customer. Your material increase, decrease percent on your pricing, and the decimal precision on your invoice. The shipping information indicates whether or not you want separate invoices. Your invoice creation method, batch, ship to only, supplier packing slip, PO, supplier packing slip, customer PO, or your invoice reference. You can have a customer supplier code. This is where you can put in your DUNS number and overship percent. This is how you would want to track on-time delivery variance days to your customer. And if you have any special reports for this one customer, you can put those report names here. And we have a summary tab where we show you the average days to pay, weighted average, average days late, last payment date, last sales date, and your open order amounts, unpaid balance, outstanding, the credit limit, and available credit. For this customer, you can select any of these buttons and drill back into orders, tool orders, sales, payments, open AR, and or collections. We keep yearly totals by year, and by highlighting a year, we can see the period activity for the customer. And again, in your master tables, the terms code file is here in your codes file, and your tax codes are set up here. You can set up your customer price discounts here, whatever the discount price may be. To get to accounts receivable, it's within the financial module, and we're going to go to accounts receivable. And the additional AR master tables are for the adjustment reasons for invoices. When you apply your cash by selecting one of these adjustment reasons, it will automatically post those funds to the GL account associated with the reason code. And that's very nice, so your staff doesn't have to remember what GL account number to offset to. So your AR processing is batch driven. You can have as many batches as you choose, depending on how many users you have. And remember, we support multiple currencies, multiple bank accounts. So when you go into your cash entry, you have many different options. You can add a miscellaneous receipt, and that would be a receipt from a non-customer. put the name in, check number, check date, check amount, and here's where you select the bank you're going to deposit to. And we're going to select that one. And you have a small informational box to put additional information. And here's where you can select your adjustment code. And typically non-customer or miscellaneous payments pertain to COBRA payments, employee purchases, fundraising, that type of thing. You would select the code you want, put in the dollar amount, and put it in here to complete that transaction. You can also import cash receipts. We have one started here. Okay, but let's work with the customer that has been used throughout this series of demonstrations, and we're going to give them a check number and a check date, and we're going to say $25,500 and our bank code 02. And if you're going to hand key the remittance, you would select that button, and you can key in the invoice number, the cash amount, and the discount taken. Or you can simply come up here and click on the invoice tab. The invoices here on the left are the open invoices for this customer, and these are the two that were processed earlier in this webinar. And I'm going to make a selection. If your invoice is paid in full, you would highlight the invoice and select the PIF or paid in full button. If it is not paid in full, you would highlight it and click on add. So for this customer, we have our check amount up here of $25,500. As we move things over from the left to the right, you will see these numbers changing as they are affected. So we're going to pay that in full. And if you have a range, you can hit the control key, bounce around selecting your invoices, and let's PIF all those, and that brings us to $10,184 with a discount taken. And why don't we add this one in for the balance of the funds to be distributed. And you can see we have $25,500 plus a discount amount of $489.05 equals to $25,989.05. And the cash amount balances to our check amount, and click OK. Now if any of these transactions had an error on them, they would be highlighted in red, and you would not be able to post this batch until that one, or the transactions in red, errors have been cleared. Once you're complete with your cash receipts, you would go ahead and print your register by batch number, and you can verify your hash totals are what you are ready to deposit. And then posting it will reduce your open AR and post to your cache, updating all of those files in the meantime. AR inquiries, you can inquire on your AR aging by customer. So until we post that batch, we're seeing these invoices out there. So let's go on back and post that batch. And let's click post, and this should balance to our hash totals for that record, and we are going to post it. There we go, posted successfully. So let's go back to our AR inquiry on the aging, and let's see what Caterpillar's aging looks like now, and verify those invoices are cleared, and the balance on their account is the $89,000. Again, supporting multiple currency, you can select what currency you want to display in. Raw currency is the currency that you added the entry in. Native would be the converted. Foreign currency times the rate, either current rate or original rate when the invoice was posted. So you have those selections there. And these are the aging buckets that are defined in system configuration. From here you can look at invoice history on a transaction, and I believe that's not an invoice, that is a credit. Let's look at this one, and we can further look back to the detail. From there you can reprint the invoice. You can look at the packing slip. You can also reprint the packing slip with this button if it originated from containers. You can look at it that way. You can look at payments against an invoice, and there have been no payments, so we don't see that. Or you can expand the record to see what information it will show you: invoice date, discount date, the terms, how old it is, the actual ship date, the invoice amount, and any dollars that may have been paid around against the invoice. And then if we look at AR payment history, and we come over here, and let's look by customer. And here's our 10-9 transaction, where we paid or adjusted any or all of these invoices. And again, we can go back and look at the invoice for the information that was on there. Expanding will give you a summary of what that was. And it indicates here the invoice was paid in full, the transaction is not voided, check date, the actual invoice date, the dollar amount, and the bank code that it went to. We also have an AR collection module, and let's add a new one. So we're going to be looking at Caterpillar because it appears that they have an awful lot past due. So our collection reason is obviously overdue. That's a good one. And the collection agent, we will select Sally Sue. Action date will default today's date in there, and we're going to call the customer. So now we are going to pull the associated invoices, and that appears to be very old. I want to call on that one. I next want to call on this one. And the invoice type, you can see a P for product, T for tooling. And let's grab that one. So now We can look up our contact, and there is no one, so we're obviously going to create a contact when we do call. And we want to save the record. So now let's go in and change. So we're going to put our action date in, and we're going to call. And we're going to add notes. Put our notes in, and we're going to save that. Okay. So from all of that, we can go over to our reports, and we can get a collection call list. And here's where we're going to select the customer cat. Okay. And we're going to grab all notes. And we're just going to preview as PDF. And this counts down the amount of time for our report to display. There we go. So let's expand that to be full screen so we can see. And you can see here, Sally Sue is our collection agent, overdue. These are the invoices that we're calling on, the days old. Original user who actually put the information in for Sally, and the notes that we added. And our collection number is 18. So you can track things, your collection calls that way. It's a very nice tool to be used. It gives visibility for everyone within the organization that has to deal with the finances. Other standard reports in the AR module. We have your cash register, and that is by batch. Your age trial balance. Just like accounts payable, you can run the standard aging with the system configuration buckets of 30, 60, 90. You can select to do a forecast, and you can select the forecasting code that you would like to see. And this will tell you what funds you have coming in that should be due today or earlier, 7 days from now, 14, 21, and 30. That tool allows you to better plan what cash you should have coming in. And if you run it on the AP side, that's the cash you're expecting to outlay for the same period of time. So that's a nice tool to plan your cash flow. You can run, again, in gross or net amount, summary or detail. Checking this will give you a report of today's date or earlier. You can include disputed invoices. You can show bad debt reserve invoices. We saw the collection call list. For your AR statements, you can elect to print a proof first and make any corrections, and then do your final AR statement printing. You can do your AR cash history detail that is to and from a date and or customer. And do you want the customer check date or your GL posted date? Any other reports that are here are customized forms. I believe this one is a collection letter to go along with the statement. And that about wraps up our overview of accounts receivable. This is an overview of the Odyssey accounts payable module. And we can start by looking at the master tables, which are suppliers. And we're going to look at a particular supplier. You have the ability to add contacts, material pricing, locations, miscellaneous charges, comments, urgent notes. Clicking on Change will bring you to the supplier master, and here we have the purchasing information set up, where you have your purchase agent, your terms code, your shipping. We do support multiple currencies, and that's where you can put your currency code that supplier will be operating under. This is the accounts payable information, where we have their federal ID. We can default a GL expense account if we choose. Defaulting of GL accounts come from many different places within the system. We can have a stock code payment group. We can assign a taxing for suppliers. And this is our tax master table, and this is where you set up your state, federal, local taxes that can be assessed on your purchases. This is where you activate 1099s. The feeding module is purchasing, and we'll take a look at that in a minute. And you can select to auto-create your invoice when your purchase order materials are received, and the same with your credit invoice if you should return product back to your supplier. If you're going to be paying them via ACHs, this is where you would set up the information for that. And again, we can auto-email the remittance information to them. The contractor tab would be set up if they are a contractor in the maintenance management module. The summary tab gives you open invoice amount, open PO amount. Then you have your year-to-date totals, and if you highlight a year, you can come into the second pane and see all of your activity by period. Now, if your calendar year totals are separate than what your fiscal calendar is, we also accumulate calendar year totals here for 1099 reporting. For any of these, you can click on Open Invoices and/or Payments to review those. On the Performance tab is where we track the on-time deliveries to us. And the supplier portal can be activated for the supplier if you would like them to come into Odyssey to view their particular information within Odyssey, such as purchase orders and receivers, and they can act on them, approve them, disapprove them, that type of information through the portal. Now, the other area we need to look at is the material inventory master. Typically, you will be purchasing materials that are set up here, and we're going to be looking at that material inventory master. And on that material master, we have our general information where we say whether or not it's taxable, is it subject to purchase price variance. Remember, our system is based on standard cost. Purchase price variance would give you the GLJV for the difference between standard cost and your actual purchase price. Auto-create requisitions and from orders, pricing to use. Here's your inventory accounts, whether or not you want to feed GL. We're saying it's a stocked item, it's in each, there's no conversion factor. And these are the locations we want to receive an issue from. We have our inventory tab that tells us what we have on hand, what we have on order, and how many are on a requisition versus how many are needed. And again, we have a summary, just like we do on the suppliers, first by year and then by period for the year highlighted here. The cost tab is where you set up your standard cost, projected, estimated, and frozen, which are all used within Odyssey. Your average pricing and last cost comes from the accounts payable module. Date of last cost is 10/9. Here you can do lot tracking if it's required of you, and of course you can have report overrides for this information as well. So typically when purchasing, we're going to typically select a material inventory master record. So let's take a look at purchasing. Now we have everything turned on in the system. So we have requisitions, and creating a requisition is very simple. Let's see if we have any out there for our supplier, and we do. And they're all outside services, and that's fine. Here we can do a quick requisition if needed. Pre-assign a PO number. If someone calls you, you don't have time to actually put it in. You can reserve a PO number and put the PO in later. Comments, view notes, approvals, remove PO, create PO, print. All of those things are available. And to create a PO from requisition, you would come into here and let's create one for our supplier. Okay. And put the supplier here as well to restrict the left side. These are the requisitions available to be made into a purchase order. Clicking Auto Create moves it over here into the pending, and we're going to apply that. So now if we come back over to purchase orders, we should see that as the last purchase order created, and we do 1089 for our supplier. Okay. And now to receive that, we would go into receiving, and we can either do it by purchase order number, supplier ID, and we should see PO 1089. Highlight that. Anything you see in red on a screen indicates that there's some type of error going on with that record. So if you selected it to receive, you would get error messages and would not allow you to receive until you fixed whatever the error was. So we're going to click on receive, and our quantity we're going to receive, let's say we just got 500 back. And you can click on default quantity if you choose. You can view notes from here. I'm going to just simply receive it. Our receiver 1255 was created for the purchase order. Okay. So here you can do receiver inquiry, you can do intercompany shipments, you can run reports based on what information you are looking for. So if we come back over to financials, accounts payable, we have AP master tables where you can set up your taxes for local, state, federal taxes, whatever is applicable, and you would assign that to your supplier. Here you can put in supplier 1099 adjustments, which is typically the first year that you convert from another system. Or if you had forgotten to activate them for 1099s and had AP activity against them, payments against them, you can adjust the amounts there. You can set up AP miscellaneous charges, such as freight charges that have a GL number associated with it, so staff doesn't have to remember what GL account, they just need to add that on to the invoice. So then we come over to AP processing. It is a batch system. You can set up a batch for each user and have multiple users entering vouchers for you. AP invoice entry. There are several ways of putting in invoices. One of the ways is receiver select, and again we're going to use that supplier ID, and you have to have an invoice number and a date. The GL date is calculated based on the selection you make in system configuration. I know our date chosen is invoice date, so that will default to 9/30. The due date will be invoice date calculated on the terms on the supplier. Clicking next allows us to select the receiver that our invoice pertains to. You can drill back into the receiver information to make sure everything is correct. You can elect to choose all of the receivers to apply to this one invoice. In this event, we're just going to select one, and that will drop it into your batch for posting to OpenAP. We have an option of doing quick entry. Again, the required information is supplier ID, invoice number, invoice date, and gross dollars and GL account number to use this screen. You can go out and select the recurring AP invoices. We have several set up here, and basically it's for any monthly payment you make, such as leases, rents, loans, your utilities, and you simply select it, and it will tell you it's going to be added to your batch. And you can click on change if you need to make any changes to any of the items. And the last way to enter a voucher is to click on add. And again, we need supplier ID, terms code will default, currency code default, payment group will default. Supplier invoice number is an input as well as invoice date. Everything else will default for you. So if we put in this supplier ID and the invoice number and the date, and we can either click on Save and Add Item or simply come up here and click on the Item tab, whereby we can add our miscellaneous item to the supplier. And we'll have to choose a GL account if not using a material ID. It will not have anywhere to default from. If you had a GL default number on your supplier, it would default from there. And in this event, I know we don't have a defaulting GL on the supplier. And once you have completed, click on Save and Add Invoice or Save and Add Item if you have more items to add. So here we've built a batch, and we can print the register, review it, make sure our hash totals are what we actually have entered, and if there are no errors in the batch, you can go ahead and click on Post. That will post it to OpenAP, update your PO and receivers if you chose a receiver. GL, OpenAP are some of the files that are updated. When you're ready for the payment, you select Payment Selection, and you select your bank. Okay, where did my bank go? Well, let's try that one. On the left-hand side are all the open invoices that meet the selection criteria here. You can select by due date, discount date. If you have a payment group set up on your suppliers, you can select by payment group. You can select by supplier alone. Anytime you put any information up here, click the Go button, it will refresh the information down here. To move around here, you highlight the invoices you would like to pay, and if there's a stop code, it won't let you pay that. Let's try another one. So as you're building your batch here, you can see your payment dollars moving up or down depending if you're putting in invoices and or credits. So let's take that credit, and let's add that one. So you can see our dollars are moving up. And once you have all of your invoices selected from the left to the right, click on Print Selection. That will show you your total payment selection as you have it here. And when that is acceptable, you can click on Print Checks. And again, you have your bank code, check date, your starting check number, And if it were an ACH, you can select your beginning ACH number. If for some reason your checks jam up in the printer, you also have an option to reprint checks. And once all of that is done, please be sure and review your checks prior to posting. You can make changes prior to clicking the post button. After that, we have to make changes in a different way. So once you post the payments, that again updates your OpenAP and your GL. ACH payments, here is where you would excuse me, print the remittance for your supplier. Select to pre-note. We can send the ACH to the bank and or resend it. And again, you have multiple choices of how you want to look for the ACH. And we have not sent here and all of them. And these are the only two that are out there ready for processing. So if we come on back here to the main AP menu, the AP inquiries, you can inquire into open payables, check history, payment history, receiver accrual, AP invoice history, and your AP aging. And in your reports, the standard Odyssey reports are AP invoice register, check register, your receiver accrual list that you can opt to have an automatic journal voucher created in GL. Purchase price variance can have a JV created for GL automatically. Intercompany payables if you're doing intercompany, your use tax report for the month, and your APH trial balance. Your trial balances you can run from and through suppliers, divisions, aging date, invoice date, or due date. And the type of aging that you have is your aging, which uses your typical 30, 60, 90 buckets, or you can select for forecasting. If you're doing forecasting, this is going to tell you what you need, what you're expecting to have to pay now, 30 days, 45 days, or if we select this, 7 days, 14, 21. And that's a very nice tool to plan your cash outlay. If you're dealing in multiple currencies, this is how to get the non-native currency. You would use select raw currency, and native using current or original rate. You want to show the dollars in gross amount, net amount. Net amount, of course, is with discounts taken. Summary or detail. And by clicking this box, you can run a report as of a date of something less than today. And that about wraps up the AP overview. Thank you very much. This is an overview of Odyssey General Ledger version 4.4. We're going to start by taking a look at the GL account tables, where you specify your account numbers. You can specify a home account that's used in reporting. It's the expense type and the budget type.